In today's video, we are going to look at one of the market leaders, Facebook, and its recent trading activity, which can teach us 5 separate trading lessons. Hi, I'm Steven Spencer. I'm a partner at SMB Capital, a proprietary trading firm in New York City where we trade stocks, futures, and options. And today we are going to take a look at Facebook. Facebook is a market leader. It is a stock that, when it is in play, is a very good stock for short-term traders. And the reason why I decided to use Facebook in today's video is when I looked at the price action from the last few days, there was a bunch of very good short-term trading lessons that I think can be applied, or I know can be applied, in many different scenarios. So I kind of want to walk you through these five lessons. Number 1, compression before expression. Number 2, second day play. Number 3, how to use an ATR extension. Number 4, how sometimes we can have a week in a single trading day. And finally, knowing and understanding what is the news that is driving a stock and how that can be important. Lesson number 1, and this is one I've been talking about for a long period of time. It's known as compression before expression. And in the case of Facebook, they reported earnings about a week ago. And following the earnings were very good. It gapped up a huge amount and then moved in a very small range for 3 or 4 days. In fact, the range was about $4. So we had day 1, immediately following the earnings, were moved around a bit, but then 3 days of very tight consolidation. When I mean very tight consolidation, the intraday range was about $4 3 days in a row. One ATR in Facebook is about $8. So that's what we call compression. And when we have compression for 2 to 4 days, quite often after a catalyst, we'll get expression, either a break to the upside or a break to the downside. And on the 4th day, boy, did we have a break to the upside. Now, it wasn't just a technical break, and we'll get to this a little bit later in one of the other lessons. There was some news driving it, but it's very important to set alerts at both the top area of that tight compression range and the bottom area. In this case, we had 254. We'd been looking at it since the day of earnings as a spot that if it got above with some strength to look for an upside move. And it turned out that worked, but it also turned into a multiple ATR move as well. And that will become relevant in one of the next lessons. So lesson number 2, second day play. So one of the primary things we do on our desk is we teach our traders how to trade stocks in play that have a strong news catalyst. And then often, many of those names that have significant moves on day 1 will set up for what we call a classic second day play. There's a few reasons why we love second day plays. Number 1, a trader of any skill level can trade this. It can be an experienced trader might trade a second day play with a lot of size and really pile on the risk because of how good of a setup it is. But even a newer trader, because of how specific the setup is and how easy it is to understand, a less experienced trader can trade that as well. Now, if you want to understand in a lot more detail how to trade the second day play, go to tradingworkshop.com, where we spend 2 hours teaching 3 trading setups, and one of them is the second day play. Click on the link above and check that out if you haven't already. Now, just a couple of quick pointers on the second day play, as long as we're on it. Day 1 has a good strong catalyst. It closes in the top or bottom 20% of its range, and then we're going to use, in the case of something that closed at the top of its range, afternoon support as well as afternoon resistance as potentially one of 2 entry points to make that play. And again, if you want the full rundown, the 20 to 30 minute how to trade that play, just go to tradingworkshop.com. And you'll learn 2 other very good setups on the desk. One of them in particular, the biggest traders on our desk, we use to really size up and make quite a bit of money. Lesson number 3 for today, ATR extension. ATR extension just means, and I referenced ATR on lesson number 1, I believe, which is ATR is the average true range for a stock. That means that if a stock has an ATR of, let's say, $2, and closes on Thursday at $20. On Friday, for one ATR would be a close either at 22 if it went up one ATR, or at 18 if it went down one ATR. And usually the ATR, typically when you're talking about ATRs for a stock, it helps intraday short-term traders judge both profit targets and then also where a stock may fail and reverse, because we know statistically speaking in ATR we have a look back period of a month, 22 trading days typically. That's what it is on our platform, I believe. We know what to expect in terms of a move for a stock. Now obviously if there's a fresh news catalyst, a stock can move a multiple of an ATR, and I get more in depth into that I think in the workshop. But as a rule of thumb, if a stock on day one had a catalyst, like in the case of Facebook, and I think that's lesson number 4 or 5, moves multiple ATRs, and then on day two has moved up another ATR, we'll look for that as a profit target and also a spot for it potentially to fail. And so for today, after it moved up one ATR and it got to the 73, 74 area, I actually looked to short it. Now in that case, it only pulled back about $1 or $2 before it went up again and was up 1.5 ATRs. But then I tried it again, up 1.5 ATRs, and eventually failed up 1.5 ATRs and came back completely. And we'll get into that, I think, in lesson number 4. So that's lesson number 3. ATR extension works on both the upside and the downside, especially on day 2. So lesson number 4 is what I like to call a week in a day. And in this case, Facebook, in today's trading action, really presented a week's worth of setups in one day. And part of that was because it had such a strong catalyst the prior day and there was strong follow through. But if you look at this particular chart that I labeled, there are 6 or 7 different action points. And I think I took action on about 4 of these different points intraday. So let's walk through the different action points. Action point number 1 is relating to the second day play, but it broke above the afternoon resistance from day 1. And that is a spot where on the second day play, one of the 2 spots we would look to get long. Action point number 2 actually served as a profit target, as also a potential failure area. That was up 1 ATR in the morning. In that case, it got there pretty quickly in the first hour or so. Action point number 3 was 1.5 ATRs, where I put on a short. Action point number 4 is where we got confirmation. We actually had 2 strong reversal bars where I added to a short position to look for it to come back all the way back down to point number 5 in the low 270s, where we potentially would look for support. I played it on the long side at action point number 5 because it had pulled back at that point a full ATR from 278. We know the ATR in Facebook is around $7 or $8 or so. And so when it had pulled all the way back there, looked to play it on the long side and played it back up to that top blue line, which was action point number 6. I was actually off the desk, and so I just put up some offers into action point number 6. But once the stock is reversed and has been up quite a bit 2 days in a row and bounces back up to an area and starts to fail, that would be a spot where we would look to reshort again as well. And then action point number 7 was when it took out the pullback low, meaning 270, somebody who is trading momentum to the downside would look to short on a momentum basis. It's almost the opposite trade of action point number 1 right on the open, where that was a momentum long to the upside. Number 7 is a little bit riskier 7, right, because it's already sold off a full ATR, but there's going to be some more people who are caught and trapped who bought into that pullback into the low 270s, and when it takes out that low, point number 5, people are going to hit out, and so momentum people looking to short might use that people stopping out as a spot to get short as well. So that was a lot of different points where you can make trades. And then also, if you think about this, if you're looking at this chart, and I've labeled this with all these numbers, think about if this was like a daily chart, swing traders would be using these points if it's closing above or below them for swing trades, and we can do the same thing on an intraday basis, and that's why there was so much opportunity in the stock today. And then the final and the 5th lesson, which is actually the first lesson that I thought of this morning when this stock came up in the morning meeting today, was why maybe I thought I might do a video on it, was what is the news? And so the way that the morning meeting works is at the top of the morning meeting, I do the fresh in-play news, the stocks with catalyst. We go through our proprietary process for selecting those stocks. And again, I spend 30 minutes teaching that in the trading workshop at tradingworkshop.com. After I go through those stocks with fresh news, I then do what I call second day and technical plays. And I open that up. If we have time, if people have a stock they want me to look at, I'll go through those in the second day in technical plays. And Facebook was a second day in technical play and had the really strong multiple ATR move yesterday where it broke out. It was a technical, but it also had a catalyst. And the person, as I was talking about in the morning meeting, I said, wow, that was a multiple ATR move. What exactly was the news driving that? Now we know right now one of the big things in the news is the president has been issuing these proclamations about, TikTok, we're going to ban it from the U.S. We're not going to allow other stocks, Chinese companies, to trade on U.S. exchanges. And this has been going back and forth now for a number of weeks, maybe even months, because we allow Chinese companies to trade on our markets, but there's no reciprocity there. And so there's been a lot of jawboning going on. And what happened yesterday was Facebook, and you can see from the headline, Facebook and some of the other names were starting to move higher because I believe Trump said something like, we're gonna ban TikTok, we're gonna ban Tencent from being involved in our markets. And why does that help Facebook? Because Facebook, a couple of weeks ago, said they were going to do something on Instagram similar to TikTok. And so even though that news wasn't fresh yesterday, and the person in the morning meeting who was asking about the question said, oh, there's old news, there's no news. Something I learned very early in my career, don't think that you know exactly what the news was driving the stock yesterday in Facebook. This person had assumed that it was because they had Facebook had announced Instagram was going to do a competing product with TikTok. That wasn't what was driving it. What was driving it was potentially any competition for that product was going to be banned in the United States. And Facebook is a winner again, just like they won when they took over Instagram. They might win with this competing product because TikTok's no longer allowed to exist in the United States. And if we look at the chart here on the move yesterday in Facebook, it's very clear that there was news driving this. It was not just a technical breakout. The reason we know that, because between 11 a.m. and 12 p.m., that's probably the lightest volume period during the day in terms of equities trading in the US, and you can see massive volume that I've circled that area right there, and much higher than the open. Typically the highest volume is right on the open and right on the close, and when you see massive volume like that into a breakout, you know that's being driven by news. And so the fifth lesson is know what the news is, understand what it is, and don't assume that you know what it is without spending a little time researching it. And then on the flip side, now that we know what drove it up from 250 to 265 and then today to 278, let's keep our eyes open next week. If a deal gets approved and Microsoft is allowed to buy TikTok and they can compete, that's going to be potentially a major negative catalyst for Facebook. And that's why it's important to understand the news and be ready to take action when the next news piece comes in. So a lot of different lessons that are applicable. You can apply these across the board to other stocks that become in play. There were 5 of them. I hope you're able to take away a few of these for your own trading. And please, in the comments, feel free if you have questions related to any of these 5 lessons, or you want to share how you use any of these particular lessons or how you trade at Facebook, share. We all learn from each other.